Hello, Spark fans, and welcome back to Advancing Spark, brought to you by Advancing Analytics, your friendly neighborhood engineering and AI consultancy. But I don't want to talk about those things. I want to talk about BI, business intelligence. My old flame, my old passion. Back in the day, if someone asked me what I did, I would say, I'm in BI. And they'd be like, what? Huh? What is that? And I'd say, oh, it's really cool. It's where you take data and you turn it into dashboards and visualizations so that people can make better decisions in the business. And by the time you said that, they've just wandered off and they're doing something else and they're staying well away from you. But that's what I used to do. And the world obviously has gone crazy in terms of the amount of engineering we do these days. I've built so many Spark pipelines. Everyone worries about medallion architectures and layers and that kind of stuff. BI, certainly in our industry, doesn't get enough focus, which is why the wave of new products that are coming out, which is basically Gen AI powered business intelligence, is very, very cool. Now, I completely forgive you if you look at this like a big old cynic and you go, it's just hype, it's garbage, it's not going to change what we do. At the end of the day, you're still going to have a dashboard. And you are. Dashboards aren't going anywhere, don't worry. But I'm seeing this wave of tools. There's a new way of interacting with your data we haven't really seen work before. We've seen attempts for it, but we haven't seen it work, where people can open a ChatGPT style interface, chat with their data and get real results, solid results, explainable results, and not have to put it in a dashboard. And suddenly that opens things up to a whole different audience who might never look at a dashboard and go, oh, too much information, I don't care, that's not for me, that's for nerds. But would, because for some reason the current zeitgeist is everyone's happy to chat to AI. They would happily chat with their data. So suddenly data literacy isn't as important because people can just ask the natural questions. There's a big fundamental shift that could happen if it catches on the way I kind of suspect it will. So that is what I want to talk about. But in the scope of a brand new product by Databricks, they announced at the Data AI Summit, the product's called AI/BI / it's got a slash in the name of the product, which is utterly bonkers. But you'll see it inside Databricks exposed. One half of that is called Genie. So Genie is this ability to chat using a large language model with your own data and only with your own data in such a way that actually drives the kind of conversation you'd have with an analyst. Like if you're an executive data analyst, go look at my data. What are you going to tell me about it? It's that kind of thing it's trying to mimic. And yeah, fundamentally, it could have a massive impact if it catches on. So that is the topic for today. We're going to take a look at Genie. We'll have a look at how it works and some of the concepts. We'll then take a step back and talk about how generative AI in BI could be the next big thing. And I'm really sorry, but I'm going to keep referring to it as generative BI, GenBI, because that's the only name that actually makes sense for it. And we're going to see it on all the hype curves. It's suddenly going to be a big thing people talk about. I was there when GenBI became a thing. Generative BI makes me feel sad inside saying it, but actually I'm quite excited about it. So there's a dichotomy inside myself, but it's fine. If you're new around here, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. I promise I'm not always this philosophical when talking about new tech. But yeah, firstly, let's go take a look at the tech itself. So I've got a Databricks workspace here, and I've got a little button saying Genie. Now, you might not have that button. If you haven't, because you haven't turned the preview on, and it is currently in preview. So I can go up in the corner, I've got previews, and I can go in and say, yes, Genie, I would like it turned on, it's in public preview, go ahead. So that is something I need to turn on, and then I'll see Genie over in the corner. So technically step 0 is turn the thing on. Step 1 is not click on Genie and start working, I'm afraid. There is a fundamental step which is required for all of this, and that is to make sure your data is cataloged properly, is in a decent state. So this thing, the absolutely succeed or fail, the crux of this whole thing's success is how well it can interpret your data and how well it can take a random question your users are going to ask it and turn it into something it can actually ask your data. Now, if your data isn't at all documented, it's not going to be very good at it. It can make a guess, but it's not going to be great, and your users are going to try it. They go, that's garbage, it doesn't understand anything, and it will be seen as a massive failure and a load of hype. If you have done as the bare minimum, set up your tables in Unity Catalog, made sure they're fully commented, made sure your columns are commented. Better, make sure things are tagged. Even better, make sure things are flagged as this is a primary key, this is a foreign key, I've actually got my ERD in there. You can do all of those things in Unity Catalog these days. But it's never been more important than it is now, because this new wave of AI won't have a lot of that context that you've already got by being in the business. It won't just know what things mean because they've been through the business process training in your organization. That documentation is the only way it's going to actually fully understand enough to be able to answer questions in the way that people in your company are going to ask them. Again, just do data governance. Just please, just follow data governance and actually document your data. And then you can play with all the cool, shiny new tools. There's finally a carrot dangling to get you to document your data. And it's automatically done for you. You can click a button and it will AI generate these things. You just have to check it. So please, just start with a decent data model that you've logged in Unity Catalog. You've given it some proper descriptions and you set a data model up. Okay, good. Now, I've not made it that easy. So this is just some Databricks demo data sets, and I've imported it into Unity, but it's not particularly clean. So let me just start my cluster, show you the sample data. This orders table, I don't know who made it, but they are evil. Because it's a single line per order, and then it has several nested arrays in there for the products they clicked on whilst they're browsing, for the things they eventually bought. And I don't know who designed a system this way. It's horrible, but great for teaching people Spark and getting people to play with just awkward data. So I've got these arrays. I've got a bunch of things in there. Product name I can see is in there, just called name. The product ID's there, just called ID. Price, quantity, normal stuff. But it's going to have no chance of knowing what those things are unless I've actually documented my data properly, which luckily for it, I have. So that's the challenge. It's not just a straight table of data. It's a fairly weird table of data that we're going to get it to try. So step 1, get your data foundations right. Shock horror. Step 2, we'll go over to Genie. So you can see I've got a bunch of these different spaces created inside of Genie. So essentially you set up a space, you set up a chat room essentially. You say this is the data that this chat room is going to focus on, and you scope it to specific tables. You give a description, some things, and then you can invite users in to start using your Genie space. So I'm going to call it, this is my the product space. So this is where people come to ask any questions about our product, about our sales, about how things are working. I'm going to hook it up to one of my serverless servers. I'm going to add some tables into it. So in this case, I've got my merch store, I've got my retail schema, and I'm saying, yeah, you can use all of those tables. That's it. I'm not building relationships. I'm not saying this is a data model. I'm just saying, tick, tick, tick. You can use those tables. And any of the background information, the Unity catalog, the history of how people normally query those tables stored inside Unity, all of that context is there. Now, I want it to be nice. I could add some sample questions. So when my users come here, they get prompted going, why don't you ask about product success or whatever it happens to be, just leaving it blank. That's it. There's all the setup I need to do to create my product space. And then, yeah, I can go and ask some questions. I can see all the different chats. I can have multiple different chats going, much like ChatGPT and all the various different conversational bots. I can give it some instructions. A lot like the AI playground inside of Databricks, I can come inside here and I can say, actually, always speak like a pirate. Speak with an accent of the Wild West. Or I can say, by the way, this acronym inside the company means this. I can provide additional context here. This is essentially a parent prompt that gets put with any of my chat prompts just to give the large language model more context, essentially. So you can put loads of stuff in there so that whenever your users are asking it, you're doing a little bit of prompt engineering and giving them the best chance of success. I can also just add some SQL queries. I might have to come back and do this because I've tried it a few times. Occasionally, bang, it smashes that SQL out of the park. Occasionally it goes, I don't understand how to do that, but I can paste it in an example and then it'll just suddenly succeed. So we'll see. And I can give it trusted assets. That is when there's instructions I want to repeatedly do, I can make a little function that goes and does it. So I can give my space just some hints about how to actually work. So other things, I can see which data is associated. I can look at my monitoring and see how many things have gone through. I can go back and change those original settings. Straightforward. This is where we want to be. We want to be in this thing saying, give me a question. So what is our most successful product? Interesting question. Traditional question. You know, you want to say, well, okay, that's a fairly decent thing to ask of my shopping basket. Now, the scariest thing with large language models is hallucinations, when it comes back and says, oh, here's the answer. And you're like, well, what did you base that on? The thing I actually love is it goes, well, what does successful mean? Do you mean number of units sold, total sales revenue, profit? Could you please specify? Ah, hallelujah. It's actually just going to say, hey, you weren't clear enough. Can you please be more precise in your language? So, okay, we want to do this. We're going to bring this up a little bit so we can see the top of it. So most successful is measured using total revenue. I'm going to be really nice and say revenue is price times quantity. Not giving that column names. Not saying it's product underscore name or any of the nested things inside the array. Still needs a bit of context, needs to be able to understand some things. But it's now gone, cool. All right, you've given me the context. I'm going to generate you a query. I'm going to find the top selling product in the retail store by multiplying the sales price with the units purchased and summing the results. Grand. You're telling me what I actually want you to do. Now, you have to know that I'm knowing what I'm doing. I'm like, I have to look at that and go, yes, that is what you should be doing at this point. That's fair. Okay, so in this case, it failed. So it wrote, I basically made a query that didn't quite work. So I can see the query, I can see what it's doing inside here. It's casting some stuff. It's using unnest, is fairly wacky bit of SQL, but I can check it's working. I can see where it got that answer from. Now I'm gonna hop out of here back to my space. I asked this question earlier, and it managed to do it perfectly happily. So I can actually just say, well, take that code that you did. Again, in this case, I said top performing. What's my top performing product? In order to do it, it wanted context. I gave it the answer. It then went and wrote the query, and it brought back a bit of SQL. So in terms of setting my new space up, just in case this happens again because it struggled, I can go in here and just add this into my instructions and say, here's an example query. Here's a query you can learn from. I'm also going to include a little bit of extra information, so it's got it. I'm going to include here. That's going to be name. And I want to include the product name. Oops. Name. Okay, so now I'm saying, well, here is a query that's going to help you. Is our most successful product. So if anyone comes and asks that question again, it's just got a bit of SQL that answers that question. So now in my instructions, I've got that down here. I could do things like naming conventions and that kind of stuff as well, but here we go. So if I go back to here, I just want to try and just re-go from here, re-put in what is our most successful product. And just see, because now it's got some SQL to base it on, it can actually go and make an intelligent decision. It can go generate some SQL that's actually, hopefully, just going to straight answer our question based on what we had. That's the plan. And then I've been trying this and doing some interesting things like saying, what's the next most profitable, that kind of good window function kind of things. We can see, there we go. It went and answered my question. The MacBook Pro is the most successful. So we can then go and do some follow-up questions and go, what is the difference between the top and second best performing products? Now, best performing. I gotta change the syntax of what I'm using. Rather than saying most successful, I'm saying best performing, but I've given it a definition for something semantically very similar. So hopefully now it's writing a bit of a query to work out the top two, and then just do a difference between the top two. There we go. So it's total revenue. So it's worked out. I've said best performing. I'm still talking about the same thing. I didn't have to actually ask about the same stuff. And there we go. So it's doing a ranked product. It's using a rank. It's then doing a difference in terms of the max and min in terms of the things that were brought back when it was the first or second ranked. Cool. Easy. It's actually written that for me. It's written the window function. It's done that. In terms of actually writing SQL, of course, I could write that SQL, but I couldn't write that SQL in a couple of seconds as it brought it back to me. I literally cannot type that fast. So loads of things like that. Super, super interesting how that works, how it pulls together, what we can do with it. If we did the, show the top 10 best performing products. And what I'm saying, the interesting thing about this is it's not dashboarding, right? I can generate visuals. I can say return this as a bar chart, as a column chart, as a pie chart, whatever it happens to be. There we go. And I can say just auto visualize. Let's see what it actually makes. I like to visualize. It's a bit like enhance. It's just going to make a visual for me. But these things, I'm thinking in my head are kind of ephemeral. They're kind of throwaway. I'm looking at that going, great, this tells me the answer. I've got a rough idea of the distribution. It's sorted it nicely for me. Thanks. I've got my answer. I'll wander off and do something else. It's not how we normally think about dashboards, which is such a, I carefully crafted this to be a good visual tool I'm going to give to other people. This is me doing some analysis, accessing follow-up questions, getting some answers, and then wandering off about my business. A fundamental change in terms of how we think about interacting with our data. Like, switch it back a little bit. I got some slides. I came prepared. The thing it's not, when I say Gen AI and BI, most people first come to the idea of saying, I've got this guy, I've got my analyst, he's trying to build a dashboard. He's going to use some kind of copilot, some kind of automated assistant to help him build that dashboard. And absolutely, those things are great. You can see it in Power BI. You can step in and say, make me a dashboard, please. If you're in Lakeview dashboards inside Databricks, you can add a visual and you can either tell it what to do or just write it a question. It'll figure it out. Getting really cool to actually really to accelerate the practice of building a dashboard. Awesome. That's not what we're talking about. It's this idea of me going to the actual large language model, the generative AI model, and saying, give me the answer. It returning some visuals, it returning some information to me, and that's the end of the interaction. I've got what I needed. I've answered my question. That is what I'm terming generative BI. That is what I think is interesting. Now, talking about traditional users, I've got an exec who might be a data savvy exec. They've come up through data. They're a CDO, a CIO. They're actually fairly happy interacting with dashboards. And they'll get to a point when they're like, oh, I can't answer it from that dashboard. They'll export the data to Excel and they'll do their own analysis. They will. You can't stop them. It's what happens. That's one of our personas. Another persona, we've got the person who's not that data savvy. They're not going to interact with dashboards. They're going to talk to an analyst and say, hey, can you just go in and understand something for me? Come back and write me a report or explain something to me. They're going to go to one of their many dashboards. And if they don't have a dashboard pre-built, they'll write some SQL. They'll write some Python. They'll get the answers somehow. And then our final persona, the classic executive of, they're not going to look at dashboards. No, my gut feel, that's better than dashboards. I understand our business. Data doesn't. And you're not going to win them round like that. Now, I think those three personas can all benefit from this kind of interactive chat. So firstly, our straightforward exec, data savvy, they're not going to throw their dashboards away. The dashboards are still there and built. They're happy interpreting them. They can get the answer really quickly just by glancing at a dashboard. That's the power of a well-built dashboard. If I have to type out the same question every time and just actually wait for that interaction, that's far slower than me just glancing at a dashboard. This does not replace traditional data viz and a lot of self-serve analytics. What it does do is when I get to the point and go, oh, I need something deeper. What about that? I've never thought about combining it with that. Well, at that point, I can just go and ask something like Genie. I can go and ask my GenBI model. Same with the next one. The analyst is still going to have a range of dashboards already built and curated to actually make their lives much quicker and faster. But when it's oh, we don't have that in a dashboard. Oh, I've actually never thought about doing that compared to that and actually looking at the difference. That bit of custom exploration. Just sling it into that kind of thing. Save it as a chat. And if that's good, save it as an instruction so you can call it later. Pin the visual into an existing dashboard, and there you go. You're starting to build up a new dashboard so you don't even need to go to it next time. Even our skeptics down at the bottom. Now, yeah, lots of skeptics are going to be like, no, I don't care. But there's lots of those execs that we've spoken to that have just been so caught up in the zeitgeist of ChatGPT and Genie and being able to just chat to these things that actually I think they would find it more acceptable than looking at a dashboard, which blows my mind because obviously dashboards have been around for decades. But there are execs who are perfectly happy chatting to an AI because it feels like a familiar interface, because it just feels like chatting via some asynchronous team Slack kind of thing. I think there's a load of people who wouldn't naturally go with a dashboard who would actually happily ask questions of some kind of GenBI tool. Not everyone. You're still going to get your data skeptics who will refuse to listen to you and just not adopt any of this stuff, and just, you cannot talk them around. Unless you want to put me in a room with them for several hours and I'll talk to them until they submit and then agree to look at some data. But in all of these personas, I am not saying throw away your existing BI tools. I'm saying we're going to see a fundamental shift of a new type of interface alongside the existing. You're going to have spreadsheets and grids and numbers. You're going to have carefully curated dashboards built to allow you to interpret data very, very quickly. And we're going to have interactive exploration of data led by Gen AI. And it's going to be interesting. It's going to disrupt a lot of how we think about things. So yeah, that's the big picture of AI BI and what it's bringing to the table. So yeah, it's still early days for Genie. I've got massive questions about Genie. What if it asks for an interpretation and 5 people give it 5 different interpretations and we're back in the days before warehousing? There is real things that we as an organization, as an industry, need to figure out about this stuff as it suddenly explodes onto the scene and becomes prevalent. And honestly, it's not going to gain that widespread adoption just yet because it still feels a little technical, because it's showing me the code, it's showing me its reasoning, but it needs to right now to engender trust. If it didn't show me any of this working out, I wouldn't believe a single number it showed me, because we've seen how much ChatGPT it hallucinates. We've seen how much the large language models will get to a point and then just make things up. It has to demonstrate trust until the data community goes, this is great. The answers are all right now. This is good. It's reached a point when we've defined the things we need to define. Things are now correct. So it's not ready for absolutely every mainstream reader who's not going to take everything it comes out with face value. But it's going to get there. And when it gets there, it's going to just be insane how different it is of people working with data than it's ever been before. So really interesting direction. Genie's not the only thing going that direction. There's lots of BI tools which are building in that kind of GenBI, generative BI kind of functionality. But yeah, super, super, super interesting the direction it's going. Now, obviously, the question, how can we get ready for it? Document your data, use data governance, give it the best chance of understanding your question as you can. It's not that hard. But yeah, try it out. Try and preempt those questions. Build in as many example queries and instructions and just text explanations of things as you can. Really interested to see how metrics inside Unity Catalog actually bundles into this and just helps us define these things. But yeah, interesting tool. Interesting demo we can have a play with and see how it works while it's still in preview. Super interesting shift in the industry in terms of where we're going. Now, you may entirely disagree. Feel free to disagree with me. I'd love to hear down in the comments if you're like, nah, it's just hype. It's going to go away. Because fundamentally, given how much people have interacted with ChatGPT over the last year, it only came out a year and a half ago. Given how much of a fundamental change that has had, I'm kind of expecting the same. But I'm happy to be argued with. Let me know what you think. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time digging into something else that's weird and wonderful and new in the industry. Cheers.